everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Dana, aka Blondie Knots, and if you are new here, where have you been? We are in our third straight week of Crochet and Chat with the Halloween character. Today we are Marie Antoinette. If you've been on my channel a while now, you'll probably understand why. This is a childhood dream of mine that I just never got to live out, and let me tell you that I am feeling my most self dressed up as Marie Antoinette, okay? Also, if you've been here a while, you would know last week we had a pretty brutal wig. A lot of you guys were so nice in the comments and you really liked last week's costume, but I had to come at you with probably one of my better hairstyles, definitely of these Crochet and Chat costume videos, but this is all of my hair. So stop what you're doing right now, take a second and click like on this video, please, because this is all my own hair and I did this hairstyle myself with 8,000 pounds of hairspray, and I'm pretty proud of it, not gonna lie. Who knew that being a hairstylist would end up benefiting me in my crochet career? And also let me know how you like this hairstyle, if it looks very Marie Antoinette to you. I think so. I needed some more bows and ostrich feathers. Sorry, I'm looking at it in the viewfinder, but overall I think it's pretty good. My dress, on the other hand, my peasants over in Versailles, aka the Amazon store I bought this from, they said to size up, and this dress is so big on me, but you know what? It works for sitting here and talking to you guys for a little bit, so I'm pretty happy with it. And yeah, overall, this is just such a fun costume for me, so much fun. I actually, originally, when I very first thought of this idea back in, I think June is when I thought about doing Crochet and Chat with Halloween characters. I was going to come in every week as like kind of a more historical, well-known figure and do almost like a history lesson on them, because I know just way too much information about Marie Antoinette and I find her so fascinating, but I realized that probably a lot of other people aren't on that same boat. So this is not a history lesson. This is just a fun costume, and I just wanted to take a second to appreciate it because this has been my favorite one up until this point. And in other exciting news, since I feel like we've all been enjoying these so much, I decided to add on one more week of Crochet and Chat with the friends. So we are going to have one next week as well for our final week of Halloween. I'm going to be posting it on Wednesday though instead of Thursday, because Thursday is actually Halloween, and in case a lot of y'all are busy, I don't want to bother you, so I'm going to post it on Wednesday. So make sure you click the bell notification so you know when I post, because you know, you never know when else I might do this and sneak a sly one in on you. But with all that being said, I also wanted to congratulate one person who guessed Marie Antoinette in the comments of last week's video, and I need to get my phone out to make sure I know who this is. So Alicia Williams 2996, you are the only person who guessed in the comments Marie Antoinette, and you did reference my 4-month-old now Crochet and Chat video where I talked about her. So congratulations. Hopefully you watched this video because I do see you in the comments of my videos a lot. But for being such a long time supporter now on my channel, I would like to offer you one of our community project tote bags. So if you would like to accept that, let me know in the comments and I can get your information from you that way. But you guys just never know when I'm gonna be throwing out these tote bags. We will have probably at least 8 more, so there are plenty more chances to win, but I'll figure out how we're gonna get the rest of them. But every now and then I just come across something that I'm like, I think you deserve a little extra love. So thank you, Alicia, for being here for at least 4 months and paying attention and watching all my content. I really appreciate you, and this is just a nice way for me to say thank you. So Alicia, let me know in the comments if you want your bag. If not, it's okay, but let me know either way. Other than that, guys, let's get into this week's Crochet and Chat, because this week we're talking all things market, which is a very exciting topic for lots of you. Hold on one second here. I gotta get situated. What I am working on today is blue, just like my dress, a very electric blue. I have showed you guys this yarn so many times, but this is Queensland cotton in the Coastal Fine Weight, which is an amazing cotton yarn. Absolutely love it. I was of course sent it by Knitting Fever, who I've told you guys, my favorite company. We love them. And I am making a cardigan, which you wouldn't be able to tell by this right now, but this is one of the sleeves and I'm making it extra long, and I'll show you guys once I get done with this. But I've been working on this sleeve for a long time. I had to take a complete break from it last week to do my video, which if you haven't seen that yet, I basically took an old cardigan that was one of my first pieces I ever made of crochet wearables, and I flipped it into something totally new and completely wearable now because it had quite a few flaws, let's call them. So I made it into something new, and I would love for you to go check that video out if you haven't seen it already, after this one of course, but I'll link it here for you. It was really fun and I put a lot of work into it, so I would love for you to watch it. Let's just hop right into the video. So like I said, we're gonna talk all things markets. I don't know how much of this project I'm gonna get done today because I'm using a 3.5mm hook, so I kind of have to like pay attention to where my stitches are going a little more than usual. I'm just half double crocheting in the back loop. This is just a pattern from my head. I don't have a pattern for you to link, so sorry. And of course I have my Susan's Bates grip hook on it. But let's see what we have in here and what you guys were asking me to talk about in regards to markets. One thing I know we can talk about off the bat that I know I got asked a lot while I'm looking for my comments here was, where do you find markets? And this is a great question because when I started looking for markets, I had the hardest time knowing like, where do I even begin with this? So my top two places I get my markets from are Eventbrite. Evently, I think, is the other one that I just don't tend to use that much. A lot of the organizations that I personally have learned to like who to work with don't use Evently, so I don't typically end up on Evently. But like I said, Eventbrite is the first one I use, and then a lot of times I use Facebook actually, surprisingly. There is a huge world of finding vendor spots on Facebook. Now the key to Facebook is actually just making sure you are in the right groups. So just go on Facebook and look up groups like vendors for this area. A lot of mine are like vending in Washington, DC, vending in, you know, whichever area you're in, look that up and look at market vending in that area. And then from that page, whichever one you find first, you feel seems credible and you like it. And from there, you can go to other pages that Facebook recommends you follow if you are interested in market vending. You do have to be so careful on Facebook because there's a lot of scammers. And so a lot of the sites do the best they can to vet out the scammers, but they can only do so much. So my other biggest advice is, if you see a post for a show you may be interested in, if it's a brand new post, I know you're excited and anxious, but leave it a little while, let it sit and see what people say, because a lot of people will be like, no, this person's a scammer, or hey, I worked this event last year, I love it. Or ask in the comments, has anyone worked this event before? How does it go? That is a fine question to ask. It's not weird and it's not rude. Plenty of people do that in my pages all the time. So yeah, I have probably 6 at least groups that I follow on Facebook, and you can just go skimming through those pages or turn your notifications on for that. So when someone posts that they're looking for either last minute vendors, especially if you're trying to get into some Christmas shows now, because basically Christmas sells out right away. So if you're still looking to get into some markets for Christmas, this is a great place to go to get those last minute, you know, ins. When people cancel, they usually will go to Facebook and ask if anyone is available to fill a spot there. So that's always a great thing. You know, you can look for crochet vendors in my area, just stuff like that. That is your best bet to finding markets, in my opinion. Honestly, most of mine I have found through Facebook, and I like doing it that way. The other thing though, I will say, let me work on my project while I'm talking to you. The other thing I will say though about that, and just to really learn from my mistakes, if I can help you with anything, is if you have the time, go scout these areas out before you sign up. Maybe if they have other events before your event, go scout it out. Before you sign up though, there is nothing I can recommend more than scouting out the venue prior, because you might be like, well, Dana, I don't have time, or you just are so anxious you want to sign up for the show and, you know, just assume that if they're having an event, it's a good event. But that is not always the case, unfortunately. This year alone, to be fully transparent, I probably lost out on at least $800 worth of markets that either I didn't do any research on, so I didn't realize what the show was going to be like, or the location it was at. A couple of mine ended up being at very unsafe locations that I didn't feel comfortable setting my supplies up at and vending there. So you just really have to be so careful. And if you get to a show and something doesn't feel right, the area doesn't feel right, the people around you don't feel right, and especially if you're alone, please leave. please just leave. It's seriously not worth it. Like I said, I've left plenty of shows now that I didn't feel safe at. You know, the most important thing is your safety. Of course, you want to go and do this event, and here in DC, unfortunately, a lot of the events are very expensive. So a lot of the ones I've lost out on were around the $130 range, but I'm like, okay, I'd probably rather lose $130 than be nervous and scared, even if nothing happens to me. You know, I don't even want to be worried about it. One of mine was in an abandoned mall. So that goes to show you, like, do your research, you know? I even disputed it with my credit card company, and that organization that put the show out, they fought it back. So I ultimately did not get my money back, which was very disappointing and very sad. It was a Christmas show last year. But you know, it just is the way it is. I was not about to go and do a show at an abandoned mall. And mind you, I was going to be the only vendor there. So does that not sound suspicious to you? So yeah, like I said, it's so not worth it. When I got to the event, I just had this horrible feeling in my stomach before I even walked in. I walked in there with my husband to look around. I was, like I said, the only vendor who signed up for that day. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. So do larger reputable shows if you can afford to, especially in the beginning if you don't have time to vet out a show. It's good to do one that you can see a lot of people have responded positively to, and you can tell that it's probably a pretty reputable company hosting this event. I would say then it's probably okay, but also you just have to really make the best decisions you feel like for your business. But yeah, just proceed with caution. And especially if it's your first year going into markets, just be very careful. Sign up for just a few, you know, so then if you lose money, it's not, you know, so much money that you lost. And just be careful, really. Those are my biggest tips. Finding good marketplaces to vend at is probably one of the harder parts of market vending. But once you get your core spots of places that you like to vend at, it makes life a whole lot easier. So just keep that in mind too. It gets easier the more you do it. And now I know who I like to go with and who I don't like to go with. And if I'm going to do a new show at a new location, I'm going to vet it out before I do so. So you do learn from your mistakes. And just be careful. No amount of money is worth your safety. Your safety is number one. I don't mean to scare you away from markets by any sense, but I do want you to be careful and not lose out on your money either. So that is number one, was where to find markets. I hope that that was kind of helpful. That was a lot. Also, while you're at these shows, this is a great time to network with other people. That's what I did at my first show. I found some girlies that looked like people who maybe they didn't sell the same thing as me, but I could tell that they put a lot of time and care into their product and their setup, and I liked their display. So I'd go over to them and be like, hey, have you been doing events for a while? What events do you like to do? And get in contact with people that way. That's another fantastic way to network. And it's just a great way to find other shows that one day you could also be involved in. So that is another great way, is just word of mouth. Word of mouth is always my number one go-to for markets. If I have a vendor that I have worked a lot of shows with and really trust, if she says it's good, I'm going to take her word for it and trust that it's probably pretty good. And I think you probably could do the same. So yeah, definitely word of mouth is another great way to find a show near you. And not to say you won't end up wasting your money at some shows. A lot of it is unfortunately trial and error, and you're going to have some that just didn't work for you, and that's okay, but now you know. And the more shows you go to and the more people you sell to and where you have your successful shows versus maybe your more unsuccessful shows, you will start to understand your demographic, your age range, what kind of people like to buy your product, and then you can base your markets based on that too. So it's all a learning process, as is anything. The more you do them, the more you'll find out where you need to be and when you need to be there. So that is my biggest piece of advice. Sorry, that was a really long question to answer, but I have a lot of feelings about it, and I've had a lot of experiences with, unfortunately, losing out on money. So anytime I can share that with you, I'm more than happy to do so. Another great question I was asked was, hi Dana, would you keep selling what you see sells over what you enjoy making? This is such a good question. I love this. So with markets, of course, there are going to be best sellers and there are going to be worst sellers. And sometimes for me, it seems like some of my worst selling products are things I like making the most. For instance, I told you guys about those purses. I love making those little concert bag style purses. It's fun to me. I can change up the color. It feels like I'm making something new. And you know, I'm not a huge amigurumi artist. So for me, I love making things that aren't amigurumi. But unfortunately, they don't sell very well. So you do have to take that into consideration a little bit. And I just learned that they don't sell very well. This year was my first year bringing bags. And like I said, the response to them wasn't that great. I'll be completely honest with you. But I would say too that if it's something you really, really, really don't enjoy making, but it sells really well, you could, one, up the price a little bit maybe, so it would be a little bit more worth your while to make it. Another thing you could do is just make less of them, or yeah, just don't make it at all. Even if it is a best-selling item, you know, market prepping does have to be fun. I do have some items that I make and bring to shows that I don't necessarily love making. But a lot of times too, if I have something I don't really love to make, I will just try other things maybe similar to it that I might enjoy making more, just to try to flush out what I don't really love making. Right now at my booth, I would honestly say I really like making everything that I have, except for pumpkins. You guys know, if you've been here a while, I actually really don't enjoy making pumpkins that much, solely because they hurt my hands and my wrists, and sometimes it puts me out of commission for a couple days. Honestly, that woolly is thick and quick can be kind of difficult to work with a little bit. It's a very thick yarn, and I'm not really one that uses a lot of thick yarns, so it's an arm workout, you know, it really is. Definitely didn't make nearly as many pumpkins as I would have liked to have made this season, but I'm okay with that. You know, whatever sells, sells. I won't be making any more, because I would say if it's something you don't like making because it's affecting your health in the sense of your wrists hurt, your arms hurt, your back hurt from making it, whatever, it's just not worth it. Other things will sell. You can just, like I said, try to find alternative items that could kind of give the same vibe, the same idea, but could be easier on you making them, especially because sometimes you really start to feel like an assembly line making item after item after item, and it all starts to feel the same. So, you know, it's easier when you're making a lot of things you like versus things you don't like. But I think too, as long as you have a good balance, like the majority of the things you really, really like to make are at your markets, it's okay to have a few sprinkled in that maybe you don't like to make as much. But then just don't make as many of them if they're really, you know, something you want to still have at your booth. So that's probably my best advice on that. And yeah, maybe up the price a little more so it's a little more worth your while to make. I'm honestly trying to think if I've ever had something at my booth that I really didn't enjoy making, but that sells really well. I don't really think so. Honestly, my beanies would probably be the only thing that I like making the least, that sell the absolute best in my adult size, just because they take me so long. It's not because it's hard. It's just a little bit boring and it takes a long time. Yeah, other than that, I'm very lucky to say that a lot of the things I make, I do really like. So hopefully that helped. All right, let's get another question here. Getting a couple stitches in on this. I feel like this project's gonna take me months and months to finish, but I'm so obsessed with the color that every time I pick it up, it just makes me so happy. I just love this electric blue, and I really don't actually ever wear like a blue like this, so this will be a fun piece to have when it's done. I'm very excited to show you guys. It's hard to explain what I'm thinking of doing because it's just in my head. I don't have any reference for it. I don't even know if I've seen someone who's crocheted something like this before. So yeah, I'm very excited to show it to you guys once it's all done. All right, let's go to our next question, and let's get a sip of Red Bull while we're at it. Oh gosh, here's a good question. Somebody asked, how do you start market inventory from scratch when you have nothing? That is a great question. So obviously, that's what happened to me. I literally started from nothing because I was not an amigurumi artist before I started markets. And, you know, the more people I saw doing markets, I'm like, I gotta get in on this. This looks so fun to me. So I started Googling what people are bringing to markets, all that stuff. And honestly, I just started making stuff like a mad woman, and I just tried to stock up on as much stuff as possible as I could before I like literally couldn't make that item anymore, and then I'd move on to the next thing and blah blah blah. The first show I ever signed up for was a Christmas show, but I signed up for it in October, so I had a good like 2 months to prep for the show, which was really nice because, like I said, I had no inventory. It was my very first show ever. And so I just went crazy market prepping, and I just had to buy yarn in small quantities. I remember one of my paychecks, I took $100 and I went to Joann's and I spent $100 on blanket yarn to get started to make chickens specifically. I very much remember this whole entire process. I was so nervous, but I'm like, whatever, you know, I just got to do it and pull the plug, and it'll be a lot easier once I just have the yarn. I had to buy the stuffing. It is really honestly overwhelming at first to buy all the supplies to start market vending, but you also don't need it all at first. You know, you have to slowly build and build your inventory up and build your booth up in general. You know, even these crates are like $10 on sale a crate. So if you need 5 crates, that's already 50 bucks. That's a lot, to me at least, to go to something that you haven't even made money at. Plus then your show costs, all the material costs. I mean, you're quite invested by the time of your first show. So what I did was, I think I bought 3 crates to start. I'm like, okay, $30 is better than 50. You know, I bought the blanket yarn. I didn't have a whole large selection at my first show, which was actually okay. You know, more is less sometimes. So if you have more inventory of less choices, sometimes a lot of people like that. It makes it very easy to look at what you have. And I feel like it can keep your booth from looking cluttered when you have less. I also feel like when you have less selection of inventory in terms of what you carry, it can help you look less cluttered in the beginning too, especially if you don't have a lot of props in the beginning, which I'm assuming you won't, because again, props cost money. It's very expensive. And so if you don't have a lot of different ways to separate items you're selling to make it look organized, it's actually more beneficial to you to have maybe fewer different items and then just have them spread out more cohesively throughout your booth. I think that personally looks really nice. I think my first show, I only had really like chickens, beanies, frogs, and snowmen. That's really kind of all I had, but it was enough, honestly. And I just spread it out perfectly, and I feel like it really looked like I've been doing this for more than one show, but it didn't look chaotic. You know, it looked very much like, hey, this is what I sell. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. You know, but it's not overwhelming to look at, and that can really help drive sales too. When people come over and they get decision paralysis from looking at everything, and everything just, you know, by the time they get to your booth, who knows how many booths they looked at first. And it can get very overwhelming, and people just start to, I think, blank out and start seeing the same thing everywhere. So the less you have, the better it could be too. I would just focus though on maybe those couple items you really want to make, or that you've done your research on and see are best sellers for a lot of people at markets, and focus on those things. I think that's a really good way to approach it and be less intimidated maybe by it all. Also, it'll cut down your yarn costs because you'll have to buy a lot less different yarn variety. So if you have to buy one item that's green and you don't have green anywhere else in your booth, then you're only buying it for that. Whereas if you're making white chickens, you can also use that for snowmen, which is what I did in my case, or just things like that. Yarn that you can distribute throughout your booth and other items, and so you're not just buying yarn for one specific thing and then you're wasting a lot of your money just buying it for that one thing. I hope that makes sense how I'm trying to word that, but if I can buy yarn that has purpose for more than just one particular item, that's always a win in my book too. And sometimes I do make my items based on some of the yarn I have to buy regardless anyways. It also does help too, once you do start to expand your booth a little bit into other items, it helps still keep it cohesive, keep a color palette going, unless you're going for a super loud, crazy fun rainbow booth. I like my booth to all kind of be in the same color palette for the most part. I think it's very aesthetic, it's very appealing, it's soothing to me, and so personally that's what I like to do. Again, you'll just have to find what works for you, but in the beginning, the biggest thing is just market prep your booty off, and less variety and inventory is definitely more in the beginning. So just focus on that, focus on those core things that you want to make, that you research that sell well or you think will sell well, and then you can just build off of those. The more you do shows, and every time you do a new show, you'll just keep building inventory till eventually you'll just have so much inventory that it won't even be an issue anymore. But yeah, definitely just don't get overwhelmed, because it's a whole lot in the beginning. I know that. And just try to do it in the most cost-effective way too, in case you end up, you know, God forbid you start doing markets and you realize, I don't like markets, or markets aren't for me, because they're definitely not for everybody. You don't want to invest a whole lot of time and money into it if it's not going to be something that's for you. So definitely try to get your market organizers off of a clearance or some kind of a sale. Do some smart shopping and really try to do it on a budget, especially in the beginning. I still do mine on a budget. I don't care. I'd rather put more money in my pocket than into my booth if it's not necessary for certain things. Of course, some things I want to have my booth looking nice, so I'm willing to invest, but there's some silly things where I don't need to spend $12 on a bin to hold something when I can go to Michael's and go in the clearance section and find a really adorable bin for $2. I have a video I'll link here about market booth supplies that I have bought in the past that I still use. All of it I still use today, and it's all been cheaper stuff to try to keep my expenses of it as low as I can and still look as high quality as I can. It does not have to be expensive to look expensive. You know what I mean? Just because you made your booth on a budget does not mean it can't look nice. My booth is always on a budget, and I feel like my booth always looks very nice. I try to put a lot of time and effort into my booth, but without spending a whole lot of money. And I'm so passionate about doing that. So yeah, anyway, I'll link the video here. It's a really old video, and maybe I'll have to make a new one and update it. Okay, and we'll close with this one. This is another one I got asked about a lot, which had to do with Etsy. So basically Etsy versus doing markets, what I think about all that, etc., etc. So for one, selling on Etsy is not something I really do. I put my patterns on Etsy, and occasionally I list things on Etsy, final product wise. A lot of extra stuff I have from markets or things like that. I don't consider Etsy to be a primary place I sell on, solely because the fees are so high on Etsy. It's kind of ridiculous. Anytime I list a product on Etsy, I have to, unfortunately, account for those fees in my price. And I honestly hate doing that. I think eventually one day I'll kind of figure some kind of website or something like that out for myself so I don't have to go through Etsy. But yeah, Etsy is just what I use right now for pattern sales, stuff like that. A lot of people feel comfortable purchasing off of Etsy, which I totally get because I feel the same way. But the fees are super high, so that is one thing. But I will say Etsy is a lot less work than doing a market. The unfortunate part is that Etsy, especially if you're just starting, it's really difficult to get traffic onto your Etsy, in my personal experience and my personal opinion. At the beginning of this year, before I started my YouTube channel, my Etsy page had 6 sales, I think, and it's been open since the end of 2021 or 2022, right around there. I started my Etsy, and I had 6 sales up into January or February of this year. So I have definitely had a rough run of the mill with Etsy for sure. I still don't consider myself to be someone who has a lot of sales on Etsy. A lot of people have far more sales. After a certain point, you do start to get promoted more, and Etsy will help bring more traffic to your page, but in the beginning it is rough. It really is hard. You know, you do have to be prepared for that. It's really difficult in the beginning, but markets are definitely not what I would consider easy by any means. It's a lot of work. You see that goes into before you go. Setting up's a lot of work, tearing down's a lot of work. It's just all around. It's just a lot of work in general, but it's definitely a better way to make sales quickly. I remember after my first market, I was just like, oh my gosh, I've never made this much on Etsy, you know, in all my time. Plus, you don't have to worry about fees. You don't have to worry about shipping. There's so much that just doesn't go into it that goes into having an Etsy page. I still honestly haven't figured all the shipping stuff out properly. It still trips me up and makes me confused and nervous. And, you know, I'm always worried about the package getting to the person. And it just, that's the fun part about markets, is that it eliminates a lot of that stress. You don't have to worry about any of those things when you're at a market. So I definitely prefer markets over Etsy. I'm not opposed to Etsy, and I love Etsy for my pattern sales especially. But for physical items, I definitely prefer selling at markets. Again, though, that's all going to be totally personal preference. Like I said, you might end up doing markets and not really like it, or you might end up making an Etsy shop and not liking that and doing markets and loving that. So you can do a little bit of both. You can do one, you can do the other. It's really just something you have to test for yourself. It's all different. Everybody's different. I will also add too, just really quick, I just thought about this, some things I feel like are a necessity for starting doing markets that I think you should definitely consider bringing with you as a beginner of markets. So you definitely need a table. That's one thing that you kind of can't pass up. A table, you'll have to look at the particular show you signed up for, because sometimes you have to bring your own chairs. Depending on the show and the organizers at the show. For me, it's really been hit or miss if shows have chairs there for you or not. We've just bought our own camping chairs and we bring them with us. We literally sit in camping chairs. It's no big deal. Honestly, most people sit in a camping chair. It's not weird or silly if you bring a camping chair. I would highly recommend you get a Square reader. To take payments on Square. I would not just solely rely on cash sales, Venmo, Zelle. A lot of people, one, don't feel comfortable doing that, don't want to do it, or don't have it, and don't want to set it up to pay for something, you know, which totally makes sense. So a Square reader is definitely really important. I know cash seems like a thing of the past, but plenty of people still come to markets with cash. So make sure you have a cash bag. I always have change. I'll bring X amount of ones, X amount of fives, X amount of tens, X amount of 20s to make change. That seems to work really well for me. What else is really important? Obviously your inventory. I put mine in little like clear storage bins. I bring it that way. Some kind of sign to promote your business, who you are. Business cards, really, really important. You have business cards to hand out. So many people ask for them, or you just pass them out. You know, you'll get a lot of follow and traction on your pages that way if you give out your business card to people. What else is really important at a market? Honestly, personal preference, but I think a tablecloth is pretty important at a show. I definitely got one right off the bat. They're pretty inexpensive too, so I would highly recommend you look into getting one of those to start. And oh gosh, what else? It's hard to think of these things right all off the top of my head that you like really certainly need to do a show. I think those are kind of it. If I'm editing this and think of some other stuff, I'll add it in. But yeah, I do have some other videos too, speaking on market stuff. That one video, like I said, was a pretty good video. If you're a very beginner getting into markets and you want some cheap booth supplies, I would highly recommend you check out that video. I do tell you where I get a lot of my stuff at, and I go pretty in depth about what I like and how I set it up that way. You know, I've showed you what I bring in my market bag and stuff. Maybe I'll reiterate that in this upcoming vlog. Maybe I can talk more about what's in my bag when I go to shows. That could be kind of fun and interesting. So yeah, I'll do that. In my upcoming market, I will tell you guys what's in my bag again, in case a lot of you are new here and you haven't seen my prior videos where I talk about what's in my bag. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for joining me if you're not even someone who's invested in markets and you just came to hang out and crochet and chat with me. I really appreciate you being here. I have so much fun with you guys. I honestly, like I said, this costume was certainly my most favorite. I have to go grocery shopping after this, so I need to figure out how to get all this out of my hair and all this hairspray out, but it was totally worth it and totally worth coming to hang out with you guys. Did I show you my fan? Did I show you guys I had this prop for this week's video? This is also, hint for next week, this is a prop that's going to work in next week's video too. So if you want to guess next week's video, it's totally random. All these outfits, as you've come to notice, have been completely random and out of the blue, but you know, it was one I thought of at the last minute, and I thought, I don't want to wait till next year to do that, so we're gonna do it this year. What the heck, why not? I had so much fun filming these with you guys. I'm so glad we added an extra one on. Let me know in the comments, because I am recording these now in real time. Let me know what you want to talk about next week. What should we talk about? Anything at all. I'm open to suggestions, of course. I'll try to think of some other fun stuff to mention in next week's video. Thank you again, Alicia, for watching my videos and being such a supportive and active viewer on my channel. I know I have a lot of you guys who are very supportive and very active here, and I'm just so grateful for you. I adore each and every one of you. You mean so much to me. I can't wait to come at you next week with another one on Wednesday though, not Thursday. Don't forget to turn on your bell notifications. Don't forget to like this video just for my hair alone, please. It was not easy, but it was worth it. Also, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would certainly love to have you around. I don't want you to miss any crochet and chats. Oh, I didn't get that much done in my project, as you probably saw. I mean, it's gonna look the exact same to you, but I think I only got 2 rows done. I did a lot more talking this time than crocheting, but hopefully you got a lot done. Don't forget to let me know how you're doing and what you're working on this week. But other than that, I love you guys. I'll be seeing you Monday in another new video. And until then, bye!